Senhoras e senhores, boa tarde. É com grande satisfação que iniciamos o evento de apresentação do Programa de Bolsas para Mestrado e Doutorado da Universidade de Stanford. Queremos primeiramente registrar e agradecer a presença das autoridades que estão conosco. O capelão do Mackenzie, Reverendo Dr. Marcelo Coelho, representando o chanceler, Reverendo Dr. Robinson Grangeiro Monteiro, o reitor da Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie, professor Dr. Marco Túlio de Castro Vasconcelos, o professor Walter Eustáquio Ribeiro, diretor de Relações Institucionais do Instituto Presbiteriano Mackenzie, que está representando o diretor-presidente do Instituto Presbiteriano Mackenzie, Dr. Milton Flávio Moura, o diretor de Admissões Internacionais e Auxílio Financeiro de Knight Hennessy Scholars, da Universidade de Stanford, e palestrante desta tarde, Luque Anthony Peña, o professor Dr. Pedro Buque Avelino, coordenador de Cooperação Internacional e Interinstitucional da Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie. Agradecemos também aos docentes, aos alunos e ao público presente, bem como aos que nos assistem pelo canal da TV Mackenzie no YouTube. Para realizar a reflexão bíblica e a sua saudação, convidamos o capelão, Reverendo Dr. Marcelo Coelho.
Muito obrigado ao Rafael, saúdo a todos os presentes, em nome do nosso chanceler, Reverendo Dr. Robinson Grangeiro Monteiro, saúdo o nosso palestrante, manager Luke Anthony Peña, you are welcome here. E eu quero rapidamente fazer uma breve reflexão sobre esse momento, que é um momento de congraçamento, é um momento de acolhimento da Universidade de Stanford, mas é também um momento que toca a raiz do que somos, da nossa identidade. E a nossa identidade mackenzista é também uma identidade de repartir aquilo que temos recebido, por intermédio de bolsas de estudo. Então, estamos num ambiente super familiar quando trazemos aqui a Universidade de Stanford e o seu programa de bolsas, porque você está num ambiente onde nós aprendemos, desde o início da nossa história, a receber e a repartir. E essa é a marca da comunidade cristã na história. E o texto bíblico de Atos, capítulo 4, diz que naqueles primeiros cristãos da história, na igreja em Jerusalém, eles eram um, o coração e a alma. Ninguém considerava exclusivamente sua nenhuma das coisas que possuía. Tudo lhes era comum. Depois diz que nenhum necessitado havia entre eles, porque os que tinham as suas terras ou casas, vendendo-as, traziam os valores correspondentes, depositavam aos pés dos apóstolos, então se distribuía a cada um à medida que alguém tinha necessidade. Sobre o trabalho e sobre a economia, nós aprendemos com a Reforma Protestante 3 princípios importantíssimos. Ganhe o máximo que puder. Guarde o máximo que puder. Doe o máximo que puder. Nós queremos aqui contribuir com a carreira dos nossos futuros pesquisadores internacionais, que aqui estão, pesquisadoras, e queremos acolher, Dr. Luke, nesse ambiente, que é o ambiente mackenzista, no qual há uma absoluta familiaridade com esse movimento de repartir, de acolher, de promover um crescimento através do compartilhamento. Que Deus abençoe a cada um de nós, abençoe também a sua passagem aqui pelo Mackenzie. Eu sei que temos aqui também candidatos de fora da instituição. Saiba que vocês são muito bem-vindos aqui no nosso ambiente, o ambiente do Mackenzie, e esperamos que ele seja uma ponte para outros rumos e grandes possibilidades na vida de cada um dos senhores e das senhoras. Muito obrigado.
Convidamos agora o professor Walter Eustáquio Ribeiro, diretor de Relações Institucionais do Instituto Presbiteriano Mackenzie, para realizar a sua fala.
Muito obrigado. Boa tarde ou boa noite? Boa tarde a todos. Professor Luke Anthony Peña, you are very welcome to our school, to our university, to our country. Both of our countries have a long time of friendship. We have our school began with a couple of Americans in 1870. I think 15 years before your school began in the United States, and we have many similarities. Your school began with a couple, Jenny and Leland, Stanford, and here we have a couple of American missionaries. They came here 2 years before 1870 when they began our school, and today we are proud in big university. We have many proud to stay here. You are very welcome. Thank you. Uma alegria estar aqui. Parabéns aí a todos que estão buscando uma escola de excelência também, como é o Mackenzie, para dar continuidade aos seus estudos. É muito bom quando nós recebemos uma escola como Stanford. Eu estive lá em 2014 e é uma escola realmente fantástica. Quando nós começamos a fazer algumas comparações e ver alguns números de Stanford, é uma escola que tem 29 prêmios Nobel entre seus professores e alunos. Imaginem, dos quais 19 são professores da Universidade de Stanford. Isso é maravilhoso, né? E dentre os seus alunos notáveis, a gente tem na área de esportes, na área de ciências, na área de tecnologia, desde Tiger Woods, né, Tiger Woods foi por muitos anos aí o esportista mais bem pago do mundo, né? Maior... e diversos outros, como o criador da HP, os criadores da HP, Hewlett Packard, né? Os dois também foram alunos da Stanford. Se nós começarmos a pegar a relação de alunos notáveis, nós ficaríamos aqui falando boa parte do dia. Criadores da Nike, muitos, são diversos, né? E agora temos alguns alunos nossos também fazendo a pós-graduação lá, e eu desejo sorte para vocês, em nome do presidente Milton Flávio Moura, nosso presidente do Instituto Presbiteriano Mackenzie, que não pôde, infelizmente, por viagem, estar conosco aqui nesta noite, mas ele me pede que traga um grande abraço a todos os nossos alunos e todos aqueles que também, de outras instituições de ensino, estão conosco nessa noite. Deus abençoe a todos, uma alegria muito grande estarmos aqui. Muito bem-vindo, professor Mike. Professor Luke, desculpa. Boa noite a todos.
Convidamos agora o reitor da Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie, professor Dr. Marco Túlio de Castro Vasconcelos, para realizar sua saudação.
Muito boa tarde a todos. Cumpro-me aqui de uma maneira muito objetiva e rápida, dar boas-vindas a todos que estão conosco nessa tarde e noite, agradecendo por esse momento singular. Nós, muitas vezes, precisamos de celebrações, de realizações, e esse é um dia especial na vida da universidade. Eu aqui quero dar não somente as boas-vindas aos nossos alunos, egressos aqui da Universidade Mackenzie, mas também todos que nos visitam, sintam muito bem acolhidos aqui em nossa casa. Ao professor Luke, nós também damos as muito boas-vindas, e quero deixar aqui nossos cumprimentos à pessoa do chanceler, encaminho aqui pelo reverendo Marcelo, também ao presidente Milton pelo presbítero Eustáquio, mas, sobretudo, eu quero deixar aqui uma palavra de reconhecimento e gratidão ao trabalho que a nossa cooperação internacional tem feito na pessoa do Pedro Buck, mas também agradecendo os esforços do nosso escritório Education USA aqui também. Muito obrigado, desejo uma maravilhosa exposição, palestra ao professor Luke, e sejam muito bem-vindos mais uma vez. Abração forte.
Passamos agora para a palestra intitulada Knight Hennessy Scholars, conheça a bolsa de estudo de pós-graduação em Stanford University, que será realizada pelo diretor de Admissões Internacionais e auxílio financeiro de Knight Hennessy Scholars da Universidade de Stanford, Luke Anthony Peña, com a leitura breve de seu currículo. Luke Anthony Peña é diretor de Admissões Internacionais e auxílio financeiro de Knight Hennessy Scholars da Universidade de Stanford. Possui 14 anos de experiência profissional buscando talentos excepcionais, recrutando estudantes para ingressar em comunidades rigorosas e apoiando candidatos por meio de processos de seleção competitivos. So, Luke, the floor is yours.
Olá, boa tarde. Meu português now e bom, so that's all I have. It sounds like there were beautiful, wonderful things said about me. I don't know if they're all true, but I'm very excited to see all of you here. Thank you very much for welcoming me. Thank you to the Mackenzie leadership, to the faculty for being here, for greeting all of you. Thank you to Education USA for helping to coordinate this. And thank all of you. Thanks to all of you for spending time this evening to come and learn a little bit more about who we are. So as you heard, my name is Luke Anthony Peña. Can you hear me okay? I'll give this a little closer, okay, so that everyone can hear. My name is Luke Anthony Peña. I'm not Brazilian, I'm an American, and I'm delighted to be back in Sao Paulo. I used to come to Sao Paulo every single year up until 2020. I had to take a little bit of a break. I think we might all know why. And so it is really exciting to be back here, to see your faces live in the room, and to be able to have this conversation with you. So very, very excited to be here. As you may have heard, I lead admissions and financial aid for the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program. Let me just do a quick check. Are you all here for Knight Hennessy Scholars? Okay, all right. If you wandered into the room for another reason, stay anyway. You might hear something interesting. But we are here in Sao Paulo for Knight Hennessy Scholars. So you've heard a little bit about me. I actually like to get to know a little bit about all of you, so I have a couple questions, if I may, for the room. First, how many of you call Sao Paulo home? This is where you've lived your life. Great, that's most of the room, fantastic. How many are from Brazil, but not Sao Paulo? Okay, just about the rest of you. Anybody from outside of Brazil? Where? Where are the locations? Where? Colombia, very good. I just came from Colombia, from Bogota, so good to see you here. Yes? Italy, very good. Okay, anybody from farther than Italy? Okay, all right. Anybody else from outside of Brazil? Okay, fantastic. All right, Knight Hennessy Scholars has no quotas or restrictions by country or world region. So whether you call Brazil home or Italy or Colombia, there's no cap, no number on the countries that we have. So you're all very welcome to be here. Second question, timing. Who is certain that you might want to study in graduate school and you would apply this year? Okay, about maybe 1/3 of you. Who knows you want to study graduate school, but not this year? Maybe it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. Okay, many more of you. Who is not certain if you want to go to graduate school? You're still exploring. Anybody? Okay, well that was me when I came to events like this. So if that's you and you didn't want to raise your hand, you're still very welcome to be here. It's never too early or too late to learn about opportunities in your future. Okay, question 3. How much do you already know about Knight Hennessy Scholars? Who should lead this talk instead of me? A couple of hands, okay, you were very well researched. You can keep me accountable for the things I say. Who already knows a lot? Okay, who knows some? More hands? Who knows a little bit? This is the first time that you're learning about us. I'd love to see those hands. Okay, thank you for coming. My goal in this talk is to move you to a higher level on that answer by the time that we're done, so this is my mission and my goal. Last question for all of you. what might you want to study in graduate school? We have 7 schools at Stanford, so I'll go through them all. Who might want to study business? Okay, great. Who might want to study education? Okay, I went with those 2 first because those are the 2 things I studied at Stanford, so I'm a little bit biased. Who wants to study law? Amazing, great. Medicine? All right, fantastic. Earth and sustainability? Great. Humanities and sciences? Okay, all right, very good. Did we cover them all? Did I miss any, Bruno? I think I got them all. Okay, anybody? Yes, you got them all. Okay, fantastic. No matter what you want to study, at Stanford, we are enrolling scholars from all of the different disciplines and all of the graduate programs, so no matter what your future academic path, you're very welcome to be here. Okay, now I know you a little bit better, and I appreciate you participating with me. So, we see from the room, you all have different timelines, you have different paths for your academic future. No doubt you have different goals for what you want to accomplish, and I'm guessing that you have different reasons for thinking about graduate school on that path. So I acknowledge we're all here for different reasons and we have different paths, and that's amazing. But I do also think you all have something in common. And that commonality, I believe, is that you want to be an inspiring leader in your field. You want to have impact, you want to do good. In fact, you may want to tackle some of the world's most pressing challenges. And I hope that you believe that being multidisciplinary and multicultural is an important step towards being that leader. Thinking beyond disciplinary boundaries, thinking beyond cultural boundaries. So that's why I hope you're here in the room. You aspire to be an impactful person in your field, you aspire to be a leader, you aspire to think beyond disciplines and cultures, and that's why you've come here tonight. You're curious about maybe how the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program at Stanford can help. That's of course why I'm here. I want to help you learn more about this. So this is the agenda for the talk. We'll talk a little bit about who we are and why we exist. We'll talk about what we do. We'll talk about where and how we do it. And then we'll talk about how you can join us, which is the application and the admission process. And then we'll leave some time for questions that you may have at the end so that we can make sure you leave here knowing more about us than when you walked in. Does this sound okay? Okay, lots of nods. This is good. Okay, so let's talk about why we exist. Knight Hennessy Scholars brings together multicultural and multidisciplinary aspiring leaders. We bring you together so that we complement your graduate studies at Stanford, and we prepare you to tackle the world's most pressing challenges. The program was founded in 2016, so I can't claim 1870 like Mackenzie can, but 2016 we were founded. And we were founded by John Hennessy. John Hennessy is here in this picture on the right, light shirt and tie. John Hennessy was Stanford's 10th president from 2000 to 2016. And he still now serves as chairperson of the board of Alphabet, which owns Google, so he's got still some pretty important responsibilities, but he sees Knight Hennessy Scholars as his most important work right now. And he founded this when he was stepping down from the presidency because he recognized that many disciplines, many parts of the world could benefit from even stronger leadership. And he wanted to bring people together across these cultural and these disciplinary boundaries. So John Hennessy had the vision. Then Phil Knight, who's here in the picture, in the all black, you heard Nike mentioned earlier. I did hear that. I didn't understand all of the Portuguese, but I heard Nike. Phil Knight is the founder of Nike. He's also a Stanford graduate, 1962, from the MBA program. Phil Knight provided the founding donation for the program. So between Phil Knight and John Hennessy, we get our name, Knight Hennessy. Each year, we enroll up to 100 scholars from across Stanford's 7 schools. We fund up to 3 years of your graduate study, and we prepare you for leadership roles across industry, academia, government, nonprofits, the community at large, wherever your path may take you. And we're intentional about how we define and cultivate this leadership. So you see our leadership model behind me here. The leadership model has 3 goals: to grow your cross-cultural perspective, to prepare you to drive meaningful results, and to deepen your commitment to a greater good. You also see these behaviors and traits, and this is all on the website if this is a little too small to read up here on the screen. Now we have a name for this leadership model. It's called the King Global Leadership Program, named for the Kings, yet another couple who helped fund and provide the resources for this. This is a collection of lectures, workshops, field trips, seminars that enhances your leadership ability. And it's further enhanced by the opportunity to be surrounded and immersed with people from different cultures and different disciplines at Stanford. Now, all of this sits on top of your Stanford graduate studies. So each one of our scholars also applies and is admitted to at least one Stanford graduate program. That provides the domain expertise in your particular passion, your field of study. And then Knight Hennessy Scholars builds on that domain expertise by strengthening your skills, expanding and strengthening values, building transformational leadership skills, and connecting you and creating relationships, lifelong relationships with future and current global leaders. Who are these future global leaders I'm talking about? They are, of course, our scholars. And so before I talk a little bit about our scholars, I have a few quizzes for the room mixed throughout. So the first quiz, who knows how many cohorts or years of scholars we've enrolled so far? Yes? 1 year later, 2018, yes. So what does that math add up to? I heard 4, okay, all right, 4 is correct, yes. And you might say, this doesn't make sense on its face, because weren't you founded in 2016? And so isn't this 6 years later? How does this make sense? But as you just heard, our first cohort enrolled in 2018. We had to go out and spread the word about Knight Hennessy Scholars and take some time to get that first cohort. So we've had the 2018s, the 2019s, the 2020s, and the 2021s. Our 2022s will start in 1 month, but we can't count them just yet because they're not here. So 4 cohorts so far. So that first cohort that enrolled in 2018 had 51 scholars. The incoming cohort this fall will have 70 scholars, and we're building up to a steady state of 100 scholars, all of whom, as I mentioned, apply and are admitted to a Stanford degree program, and all of whom are within 7 years of the conferral date of their bachelor's degree or its equivalent. Now, the scholars are multidisciplinary. So you see, we've enrolled scholars from 75 different programs across Stanford. 38% of them are doctoral students, so if you're aspiring to a PhD, you'd be in that group. 37% are professional students, the MBA, the MD, the JD. 24% are master's students. 10% of our scholars enter Knight Hennessy pursuing at least 2 degrees, so a joint or a dual degree. And that number doubles over time as scholars add degrees while they're with us. The scholars are also multicultural. So you see 45% of our scholars have a passport from outside of the US. I'm here because I hope to continue growing that number. 51 countries in total, including Brazil, and we have a special guest we'll hear from a little bit. We have, of our US scholars, 45% identifying as a person of color. 53% of our scholars are women, and we've enrolled scholars from 119 different undergraduate institutions so far. I aim to make that 120 because we need to add Mackenzie to the list, so you can help that number grow. But we're not just the scholars. We have great scholars, but we also have others in our community who are here to help support your experience. So this starts with our leaders in the program. We got to hear from the Mackenzie leaders here. We've got a couple great leaders as well. John Hennessy, who I mentioned, our founder, and Tina Seelig, who's our executive director. Together, they have spent over 70 years at Stanford. So they are drawing from their knowledge, their networks, their resources to coach and guide and support you. And they know all of the scholars by first name. We also have lecturers from the theater department who teach you improvisation and storytelling. We have a dedicated well-being coach. Graduate school can be emotionally and mentally stressful. We want to help you with that journey. We have mentors who we pair you with, who guide you through your experience. And we have a team. There's this really small picture of a team. I'm in there. If you squint really closely, if you have good eyes, you can see it. But we have a team that's on site that wants to support you, connect with you, and make sure your scholar experience is one where you feel very supported. Okay, so we have great scholars and we have a great team of support for you. What do we do when we all come together? Let's talk a little bit more about the leadership development model. So this King Global Leadership Model, as I mentioned, this is a collection of resources, field trips, studies, workshops to strengthen your skills and your values. And this is designed to help you grow more comfortable with ambiguity, designed to help your decision making, designed to help you become a more effective collaborator, and to be a more creative communicator. So you can think of this leadership program in 3 categories, and the first is core. Core are events that bring together the full community for exploration of important topics. What are some examples? We have the Keystone Projects. Keystone Projects are where scholars form teams with each other, and they are unifying around a particular topic that is important to them. We've had Keystone Projects that focus on climate change, on housing crises, on education gaps, on healthcare. So whatever you and your fellow scholars are passionate about, you can choose that Keystone topic. You form the teams, and then you are getting support financially and through mentorship from the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program over the course of the year. At the end of the year, we have a celebration. We have a Keystone Project Showcase where all of the teams report out on their progress. And many of them are designed to continue on, to turn into entrepreneurial ventures, nonprofits that will endure and have lasting impact in the community. This is one example. We also have our leadership lectures. Leadership lectures bring in an experienced speaker to talk with scholars about their leadership journey. And so it's a dedicated event for scholars to hear from somebody who has a leadership trajectory. Melinda Gates came and talked with the scholars not long ago. We had LeBron James. I was very excited about that one. I'm a basketball fan, but he talked a lot about education and what he's doing there. We've had military generals and leaders. The former president of Chile came and talked with the scholars. And so people who have quite a reputation in the world and in the leadership domain, and yet are spending dedicated time with you to talk about their leadership journey. And the most interesting and fun part about these is scholars are leading and moderating the discussion. So you get the opportunity to shape the discussion with this person who's visiting on campus. Another example is storytelling. I mentioned our lectures from the theater department a moment ago. So every one of our scholars in the first year is going through a storytelling sequence. This is where you're getting coaching and training on how you tell a story in a persuasive and a powerful way. And you get to pick the story you want to tell. Some scholars talk about their research, about their studies. Some scholars are talking about very personal circumstances from their life that you probably wouldn't share with strangers or put on the internet, but there's a level of trust in the community to do this. All with the intention of helping you be a more persuasive, more powerful speaker, believing that the important part of leadership is being able to tell a compelling story to others. So these are some examples of core. The second category of leadership development is what we call electives. As the name suggests, you can opt into these if you are interested in a particular topic. These tend to rotate each term or quarter at Stanford with a different topic. But I'll give you some examples of some of them. Curiosity Corner. Curiosity Corner is where we bring in some expert from inside or outside Stanford to lead a discussion that has no right answer, but it's a thought-provoking conversation around a topic with different perspectives. What might this look like? We recently had a genetics faculty member come and talk with us about emerging research that suggests we can extend life expectancy. So the question was, what if we could live for 500 years? What would that do to social relationships that we form? What would that do to our economy? What would that do to the Earth's resources? So not a right answer, but an exploration of a very provocative topic. We had an education entrepreneur talk with the scholars about our institutions of higher learning. Are they narrowing education and opportunity gaps, or are they inadvertently exacerbating them? So a really robust, interesting debate. So these are curiosity corners. We have case studies. Case studies are where you're taking a real-world example and unpacking them and exploring the leadership there. John Hennessy leads some case studies about his time as Stanford president. We've had case studies about criminal justice and what we can do to unpack recent events where criminal justice has come under fire and be better leaders. So examples of these case studies where you're looking at real-life examples. And one of my favorites is the global travel study. So these are optional, but you can opt into a trip to some part of the world that perhaps you haven't been to before. So it's led by a faculty member. It's usually 1 week in between one of your academic terms at Stanford. And you're going with usually 20, 30, maybe even 40 of your fellow scholars, exploring some particular topic. We had to take a pause for these in 2020 and 2021, but these are happening again. This year we've already been to Turkey, Norway. Scholars are going to South Africa next month, Palestine and Israel later this year. Next year we'll be in China, Mongolia, Vietnam, Chile. And so lots of great opportunities to go and be fully funded on this trip and have an experience that deepens your understanding of that culture. So that's the second category. The third and final category is scholar-driven events. So we want our scholars to be able to program and lead events for the community, and we give you funding to be able to do so. Now, these scholar-driven events range across tones. Some of them are very serious. There's an image that it's hard to see, I'm sure, from where you're sitting, but there's an image from an event that scholars led where the topic was solitary confinement in prisons. And the scholars arranged for a gentleman who had been in solitary confinement in a US prison for 44 years to come and talk with the community and explore what does this do for an individual, what does this do to a community and society. And it was an opportunity for us all in our disciplines to think about what can we do to contribute to the issue of prison reform. So some of them are very serious, and there were many stories in that were very difficult to hear and made us think about our role in the world. Some of them are more lighthearted. Scholars will take trips to the beach or to the city or go play games with each other. And so some of them are very fun and lighthearted. But all of these are, again, meant to allow you to develop connections and deepen relationships with the others who are your fellow scholars. And I will also note, scholars have the opportunity to shape the program itself. We have a scholar advisory board that is advising our team on strategy. We have admission ambassadors who are helping me to spread the word about Knight Hennessy scholars all around the world. So lots of ways to get engaged. Okay, so we've talked about why we exist, about who we are, and about what we do. The next question is, where does all of this happen? So I have to give another quiz now. Who knows the name of the building on Stanford's campus where Knight Hennessy scholars come together? You do know everything. You should be leading this presentation. We're going to give somebody else a chance. Okay, take it away. That's correct, absolutely right. Yes, I'm going to have you come and take the microphone, and you can just lead this talk. You're very good. Denning House. Yeah, Denning House is our convening hub for Knight Hennessy scholars. So it's not a dormitory or a residence. You won't find any beds there, although I do think sometimes scholars stay the night studying or talking with each other. But it's not your home where you rest your head at night. But it is a home in the sense that you are convening with your fellow scholars and with our visitors to explore leadership topics, to attend the events, to be able to study, to socialize. You will always find food and drink and coffee and water and other refreshments in the house. We want you to feel like it's a place where you're very comfortable. Now, Denning House is located at Stanford University. So has anybody been to Stanford before? I know some of our faculty and leaders have. I see some other hands. Great. Okay, so some of you have seen this beautiful place. Stanford University is a place where we have over 9,000 graduate students in total. So 100 Knight Hennessy scholars, but 9,000 graduate students at Stanford, plus the undergrads. And our community of students is typically living on or near campus. It's a residential campus. So again, you will see your fellow students inside and outside the classroom and deepen connections with them there. You also have a lot of disciplines at Stanford, over 125 that are taught at Stanford. So I mentioned earlier, Knight Hennessy has 75, so we've covered more than half of them. We're wanting to keep growing. We'll eventually get them all. Stanford is located in what we call the Bay Area. This is in the US, near San Francisco, just south, a few kilometers south, in the heart of what is commonly known as Silicon Valley. Now, Silicon Valley has a reputation for entrepreneurship, for innovation. What many people do not know is that Stanford was there first, and Stanford created the conditions that allowed Silicon Valley to emerge as the community that it now is. So if you come to Stanford, you will find a bias towards action, a spirit and a willingness to take risks, and an innovative mindset, all of which create this sense of inspiration that anything is possible at Stanford. Speaking of possible, how do we make all of this possible? How do we give you this Denning House building? How do we fund your graduate studies? How do we give you this leadership development program? Well, let's talk about the money. It's the money that makes this possible, right? So we should have a few words about funding. So we have at Knight Hennessy Scholars an endowment of $750 million US. And I share this number because it makes us the largest fully endowed graduate fellowship in the world. And the generosity of this endowment allows us to enroll scholars no matter your socioeconomic background, no matter your financial situation, and it allows us to give all of you equal access to the graduate student funding, the leadership development programming, and our Denning House space. Now, I mentioned we fund your studies. So there's a question mark up here on the screen. Does anybody know, my last quiz for you, does anybody know how many years the program funds? Yes, do I see 3 there? Yes, I hear it, I see the hands going up, yes. Everybody always knows the answer to the funding question. So this is the most important detail, isn't it? You all know this. This is okay, this is good. It is 3 years. Yeah, so as Knight Hennessy Scholars, you receive funding for up to 3 years of your graduate studies. So for those of you that might pursue programs that are 3 years or less, your education is fully funded by Knight Hennessy Scholars. Some of you might be interested in degrees that are longer than 3 years, but don't worry. You know, if you're a medical degree student who is in a 4-year program, the medical school has agreed to cover that last year for Knight Hennessy Scholars. If you're in a PhD program, which are typically 5 years or sometimes longer, the PhD programs have agreed that they will fund the remaining years. So almost all of, unless you have a very complex long joint degree program, you're going to be fully funded by Knight Hennessy Scholars and Stanford when you come to this program. So you get your tuition fully covered. You get a stipend on top of that tuition. The stipend covers housing, living expenses, food, things of the sort. You also get a travel grant to travel 1 time per year to your home. So if you want to come back here to Brazil, you'll get funded 1 time a year to do that. We give you, for first-year scholars, a relocation and a technology stipend. Moving costs money. Maybe you need a new laptop. Maybe you need new technology to be able to support this new experience. And we give you access to academic enrichment funds. This is, let's say you need to attend a conference or you need materials for your academic experience. We have additional funds to be able to support that. So we want to completely eliminate the finances as a reason to not come to Stanford. And I understand right now, with the dollar being particularly strong, these are questions that we may all have. We hope to eliminate that concern for you as a part of this program. Okay, so we've now talked about why we exist, about who we are, what we do, and where and how we do it. This leaves one important question, doesn't it? This is how you can join us. And this is about admission and the application process. So let me take a few moments to tell you about this. We have, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have no quotas or caps for region of the world, for country. So there are some great scholarship programs out there that will allocate a specific number of seats to Brazil or to a certain discipline. This is not Knight Hennessy Scholars. More of you, I want more of you to apply so that we can have more Brazilians in the program. And there's no cap on the number that we can have, so this is exciting to me. We do, however, have 2 eligibility requirements that apply for everybody. One, as I've mentioned a few times, you have to also apply and be admitted to the Stanford program of interest. And I'll talk more about that momentarily. The second is that you must have earned your undergraduate degree or the equivalent of it within the last 7 years. And so for those of you applying this year, that means your undergraduate degree would need to be 2016 or later. And that will be a moving window as we go forward in the future for those of you that are thinking about applying in a few years. Okay, among all of our applicants who meet these eligibility criteria, we then have 3 selection criteria. So we are picking the people who most strongly demonstrate these 3 things. And the first is independence of thought. This means that we're seeking visionary thinkers who are curious, open-minded, analytical, eager for cross-cultural perspective, and genuinely excited to boldly and creatively address our world's most important challenges. The second is purposeful leadership. We're seeking courageous leaders who are ethical, decisive, resilient, driven to achieve meaningful results, and motivated to inspire others to achieve positive impact at scale. And the third is civic mindset. We're seeking collaborative community members who are humble, empathetic, trustworthy, oriented to act in service of others, and deeply passionate about contributing to the greater good. That was a lot of words, right? So sometimes I like to just give a simplified version of these if it's helpful. Independence of thought, you're intellectually capable and curious. You can handle the rigor of the work at Stanford, but you're also eager to learn more. That's what that means. Purposeful leadership means that you get things done, and you get them done the right way. So rather than cutting corners, so to speak, or cheating or finding the shortcuts, you're doing things the right way. And then the last one, civic mindset, you're not just thinking about your own success, but also the success of others. That's the simplified version of that. These are the 3 things we're looking for. And lest you think this is just words on a slide in a presentation, I have to tell you, when I read applications, I have your application on one screen, and I have a form on the second screen. I've got 2 screens while I do this. And the form on the right has open text boxes, and there are 4 of them. And the first box is just an open blank text box for independence of thought. The second is for purposeful leadership. The third is for civic mindset. And then the fourth is a summary. So I share this detail with you, one, so that you have a little insight into how we review, but also so that you know these are not just marketing words. This is actually what we look for when we're going through your application. Speaking of the application, this is how you demonstrate these 3 things. And so let's have a few words about how and when you apply, a little bit about the process. This is where I start to get physically involved because we have 2 different parts of the application, and so you'll see me move back and forth as I'm talking about them. So I'm over on the Knight Hennessy Scholars side right now. You submit an application to Knight Hennessy Scholars. This application is currently open for those of you applying this year. Maybe you've already started your application. And it's due on October 12th, about just under 2 months from now. That October 12th deadline is the same for everybody, no matter which program you're applying to at Stanford. So that application consists of 5 components, which you see behind me. There's the online application form, there's a resume, there's transcript and test scores, there's the short answer and essay, and there's the reference letters. So that's the Knight Hennessy application. You submit here I go, a completely different and separate application to the Stanford degree program. And unlike the Knight-Hennessy application, which has the uniform deadline, this deadline is going to be different depending on the program that you're applying to. So I saw some hands go up for business earlier. That's the earliest deadline of all. That deadline is in September 13th, about a month away. The medical school applications are typically due in October, the education applications in November, and then many of the PhD programs at the very end of November or the start of December. So the takeaway here is be certain you know the deadline for the program you want to apply to, and we try to help. We put that deadline on our website, we put that deadline in the application, and if you're getting our emails already, then you'll be getting some emails with the deadline listed there. We do not want you to forget. Let's also talk about the materials. The Stanford application will also want you to submit materials, and they look very similar to what the Knight-Hennessy application materials are, but let's unpack that a little bit. Some of them are going to be identical. Your transcript probably should be the same for the two applications. Might be a strange thing if you were submitting a different transcript for the two. Your resume is probably going to be very similar. It's possible that maybe you customize it a little bit, but what you've done and where you've studied, those things are going to be the same. But reference letters, it starts to become interesting because you can select the same two people for your Stanford application and your Knight-Hennessy application, but you don't have to. You can select different people if you want. So you can make a decision about whether you think the same two people should write the letters or that you should select different people. And then once you come to the short answer and essays, I think you will want to take a tailored approach to both because there will be different prompts, different questions that the two applications are asking you. So you'll want to think about each of them separately. I have to mention a note about test scores here. Test scores, if your program requires an aptitude test like the GRE or the LSAT or the MCAT, or some of the others. If your program requires that, then Knight-Hennessy will ask for your scores as well. But if your program does not require it, you don't have to take that test for Knight-Hennessy scholars. So we defer to your program, whatever their policy is. We can't waive your test for Stanford, but if they don't require it, we don't add to it. We don't make you do it. And the same is true for the English proficiency. So if your program requires an English proficiency test, same policy. Okay, so we've talked about how and when you apply. Let's talk a little bit about what happens after you apply. So I'm back on the Knight-Hennessy side here. So we start reading applications in October after they're due, and we continue that review through January. In January, we will select about 500 people to advance to the next stage. So if you advance, this is a good sign. You should take this as a very good sign. And for those 500, we will invite you to upload a video to your application. It's up to 2 minutes in length. And the prompt is teach something to your fellow scholars. Now I've learned in these sessions, I have to clarify, these scholars are not going to all watch your video. So something says, is this like the whole community going to sit in front of a screen and watch it like we're doing right now? No, it's just a prompt to get you thinking for the application. Only the admission team will see it. But 2 minutes to teach something, and we hope it's any topic at all that you're excited and enthusiastic about. It could be very academic, it could be very personal, whatever you like. From those 500, we'll watch your videos, and then we'll select 150 or so to become finalists. And finalists are invited to come to Stanford's campus, but I find the word invited funny because you have to do it. It's required, so let's call it what it is. It's a requirement to come to Stanford and to spend time with us at Immersion Weekend. Immersion Weekend is where you learn more about Knight-Hennessy scholars by seeing Denning House, by meeting with scholars, by attending events, but we're also learning a little bit more about you. There are 2 interviews that happen at Immersion Weekend, one with our current scholars and one with faculty and alumni. From those 150, then we select the scholars. But hold that thought, let me come over to the Stanford side. Meanwhile, the Stanford degree program is doing a concurrent but separate review. What does this mean? This means I don't see your Stanford application, and the team that reviews your Stanford application doesn't see your Knight-Hennessy application. They're separate. So the Stanford team is reviewing your application to the program, and their decisions go out on a rolling basis depending on your program. So you see MBA decisions coming out in December, but many of the other programs in January, February, March. And so you'll see as you look at this together, that means some of our finalists who come to Immersion Weekend already know you've been admitted to Stanford, hooray. Some of you are still waiting for that decision, and I acknowledge that reality. Now this always raises 2 frequently asked questions, which I want to just address right now. One is, can you be admitted to Knight-Hennessy scholars and not to Stanford? The answer to this question is no. You have to be admitted to your Stanford program to be selected as a Knight-Hennessy scholar. I can't admit you to your Stanford program. I wish I could. My magic wand, if I had one, would allow me to do that, but I cannot. So what this means is that for Knight Hennessy scholars, we are checking in with the Stanford programs to see if you are still competitive for admission. And we're only inviting you to the next stage in the process if they say, yes, you're still competitive for admission. Now, the second question is the reverse. Can you be admitted to Stanford and not to Knight Hennessy scholars? And the answer to that question is yes. Every year, there are some people who we cannot offer admission to, but they are admitted to the Stanford program, and many of them choose to enroll at Stanford anyway. So I shared this detail to reassure you that you can apply to Stanford and to Knight Hennessy scholars, and the Knight Hennessy Scholars application will not harm your chances of admission to Stanford. It will not harm it in any way. Now, of course, the happiest outcome is that you apply to both and you're admitted to both, yes? So for you, those people, we notify you in March. You have May to tell us if you're coming or not. And then we announce our scholars to the world later in May. And then in September, you come to Denninghouse, and we'll see you there. And I hope some of you will be part of that group. Okay, so to recap, we've talked about why we exist, who we are, what we do, where and how we do it, and how you can join us. So as I wrap up this part of my talk, let me come back to my hypothesis about why I hope you are all in the room. Right? I hope you want to be impactful. I hope you want to be a leader in your field and beyond. I hope you recognize that leadership in today's complex world requires expertise across disciplines and perspective across cultures. And I hope that I've given you a small preview in this time of how the Knight Hennessy Scholars Experience can help you do that. So I will conclude by sharing one final thought, and this is a quote from John Hennessy, our founder. John was talking about the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program, and he said, "We want to create something enduring that would be unlike anything else currently available to the world's brightest minds, and that would have the biggest impact possible towards solving global challenges." This is my hope for all of you. Right? I hope you seek an experience unlike any other. I hope you seek access to the world's brightest minds. And I hope that you want to make the biggest impact possible towards solving global challenges. And I hope you'll consider doing so with us, with Knight Hennessy Scholars at Stanford. Okay, so I've given you some introduction. I'd like to take a few moments or so to take your questions and answer some questions while we're all together in the room. And so at this point, I see Raphael coming up. Would you like to take the microphone for a moment? Ah, fantastic. All right, helping me make sure that I don't miss the microphone. Okay, at this time, I want to invite Bruno, my friend Bruno, up to the stage with me. And Bruno is our very special guest because Bruno is a Knight Hennessy scholar from Brazil. And so Bruno is here in town and has agreed to be here at the event with me and to answer your questions. And how wonderful to hear not just from somebody who works in the program, but also one of our current scholars. So at this point forward, we'll first have Bruno do a few words of introduction, a little bit about yourself, your background, what you're studying, anything else you want our friends in the audience to know. And then from there, we'll invite you to spend a few moments raising your hand, asking questions. I see Raphael has a mic, so we can make sure that you're heard, and that's how we'll proceed. So Bruno, say hello.
Oh, hello. No, you're so articulate, Luke, that it embarrasses me to be here with you, but I'll try to do my best. I am Bruno. I'm originally from Minas Gerais. I studied medicine at University of São Paulo here, and then went straight to Stanford for my MBA. That's what I'm doing now. So I finished my first year. I'm doing my summer internship here in Brazil, and heading to my second year there. And I don't know, I would just like to say that Knight Hennessy is actually the best part of my program and my experience at Stanford. And I do not say that lightly or just because Luke is here. I tell my best friends that too. And I hope you apply and get admitted too, yeah.
So I'm going to ask the first question and then we'll turn to yours. So Bruno, why did you decide to come to Stanford and why did you choose to apply and say yes to Knight Hennessy Scholars?
First, why I decided to go to Stanford, I always thought, so I wanted to do entrepreneurship in healthcare. That was my idea. And I thought that in Brazil, we were discussing a little bit of that earlier, we are usually following the steps of someone else. And I felt that Stanford and Silicon Valley, they were actually taking the first steps towards something new. And I wanted to be part of that too. And I wanted to see what that looked like in practice. And I wanted to learn how that was done. And I thought there was no better place to do that than at Stanford. So I decided to apply. I applied just to Stanford, which is kind of rare because I was really committed to going there. but that was my decision process for Stanford. And then Hennessy is, of course, a no-brainer. I don't think I need to tell you why it's an amazing experience. But at that time, it was very early on. I actually applied in 2018, so I only had one cohort to analyze. My thoughts were that, first of all, they had the best of Stanford. And they gathered all those people, and I really wanted to be part of that, so I decided to go to my MBA program, but not to the Graduate School of Business only. I wanted to go to Stanford and to take advantage of all that Stanford could offer, and I thought Hennessy was a great way to do that. And I also thought that by going to the business school, of course, there are so many things that influence your journey, but I thought that Hennessy could be my true moral north, and that's what I say they indeed are. And they keep us accountable to that purpose that you say you're going to follow. And I think they do a great job doing that. So those were my main reasons.
Right, thank you for sharing. Okay, let's spend some time answering questions that you have. I invite you to ask anything at all that is on your mind, whether it be about Bruno's experience, about admission, anything that can be helpful. And Raphael will circulate the microphone so we can hear you. Yes, please.
Hello. First of all, thank you for this presentation. It was very helpful. And my name is Paula. My major is business management. I will graduate in December next year. And can I apply now for 2024 or is too early?
So the year, which was the graduation year? I'm sorry?
Next year, December.
Oh, next year. Okay, yes. You can apply when you're in your final year of university. And you don't have to have finished your final year of your university at the time you apply. You'll need to have finished it by the time you come to Stanford. But if you're in that final year, it is very acceptable and we invite you to apply. This is an opportunity for me to note the distribution of experience in the class, because this is another question people sometimes have. About 1/3 of our scholars are coming to us directly from university. So as in your case, it would be finishing your final year and then immediately coming to Stanford and starting your graduate studies. About 1/3 have 1 to 2 years of experience. And about 1/3 have 3 to 7. 7 is, of course, the upper bound on the eligibility window. So it's a happy yes that you can apply when you're in that final year of university to join us the following year.
I just may add that there is a particularity regarding the higher education system in Brazil, because the academic year starts in the beginning of the year in January. So for you, it is most likely the case that you would need to apply next year as opposed to this year. Does that make sense to you? Are you graduating in December?
December.
Yeah, so you would not be able to join Stanford for the fall in September or October, so you would need to apply next year. That's right, right?
Right, so December 23 or December 24 you're finishing?
23.
23, so you could apply then in October of 23 to start, when our academic year starts September 2024. So yes, that would work.
Okay,
and this is why we have Bruno here, to make sure that we have all the proper local context. Other questions? Raphael, I'll let you circulate as you see fit.
First, I would like to congratulate him because he's the first Brazilian to get this scholarship. So this is very, 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 very important. And I would like to know if you have any advice for those who are applying. And congratulations.
Okay, so I'll give 2 pieces of advice. One is more conceptual, the other one is more practical. And I'm happy to take any questions that you want. But the more conceptual question is just to truly, 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 truly be yourself. And the reason why I say that, and I know this is very cliche, is that I try to act minimizing the possibility that I will regret my actions. And I think not being admitted without having portrayed yourself increases the chances that you will regret. So this is my thought. If you're considering the chances of being admitted or not, you'd better just do it by being yourself and making sure that what's on the paper, or in this case online, is actually a true portrayal of yourself. This is the first thing. And they're very good at spotting like BS and all of that, so you should know that. But the second part, and I think Luke was very I think, effective in emphasizing that. It's just that you should know what your program is looking for and what Hennessy is looking for. And then you should develop a strategy to show them why you think you have demonstrated in your history, or all those elements that he showed you. It's like, oh, what am I going to portray through my essays? How am I going to choose my recommenders so that they can help me portray these? How am I going to answer my short answers, or how am I going to write my CV in a way that optimizes, that basically demonstrates that I have all that they're looking for. And these answers are usually different for your Hennessy scholarship program and your academic program, right? So they should not be just you laying out all the facts about yourself, which I think is a very common bias that people have. You should be very deliberate about what you're trying to show, and show it in a way that is true and genuine. That's my advice.
I think that's great advice. I will follow up with just a couple of my own. One ideological, and two that are mathematical. Let me start with one of the mathematicals. People sometimes look at these admission rates and in the aggregate, and they say that's my chances of being admitted. But actually, your chances of being admitted are either 100% or 0%. Right? It's a binary outcome. And I think Bruno did a nice job of talking about how focusing on the downside is probably not the way you want to think about this. If you listen to the talk and you found that it spoke to you and it was resonant, and you feel like you demonstrate the criteria, then you can very well be in that 100%, get the admitted. So that's one of the mathematical ones. The second mathematical piece, which I then look at the aggregate, the admission rate for people who don't apply is 0.0%. Always has been, and it always will be. I have not yet figured out a way to admit somebody who doesn't apply. I would like to, but I haven't figured out that trick just yet. So remember, the admission rate is always higher for people who do apply than for people who don't. So I want to give you some encouragement. And I actually think that by being here at this event, and by listening and by understanding what we stand for, you've already put yourself far ahead of many of our applicants. We get many, many applications, and I don't hide that number. I'm happy to talk about it with anybody who likes, but many of them have not put in the work that you're doing right now to understand who we are and to reflect on yourself, and I think that's very evident in the application pool. Last piece, which is ideological. American applications are strange. I'll just say that, right? They are. And the strangest part about them is that they really want to know, Bruno mentioned this, about you as a person. The essays are really personal. Most applications around the world, I know here as well, are primarily driven by scores, and maybe have some to do also with what you've already accomplished. But we also want to know about who you are. Our essay question asks you to connect the dots. Tell us about the influences in your life that have shaped you. And we want you, as uncomfortable as it may feel, especially in this context, to try to put yourself in the mindset where you will share some personal stories about yourself. Now, why do these American applications care about that? Well, because we want you to be sharing these things with your fellow classmates and in the community. And we feel like that builds stronger connections and will allow you to be able to have a network and a community that you take with you for the rest of your life. So if you are willing to be personal in the application, we believe that you will also be willing to do so when you join the community. If you're unwilling to do so, then we wonder if you'll be willing to do so in the community. So that's the reason. But I want to acknowledge the cultural difference and to say this takes a bit of work to put yourself in that mindset. This is a long answer, so I'll stop with one more point. I think the best strategy for some of the essays is to write them and write a draft and then to give them to somebody you know. And ask that person not, is this a good essay for this application? But instead to ask them, is this me? Does this match the person that you know? And if this person who knows you really well says, yes, this matches the person I know, you've written a great essay. If they say, this doesn't seem like you, it doesn't seem like the person I know, then there's still some more work to do. So those are my thoughts in addition to Bruno's. Okay, I'll stop now. More questions? Okay, lots of hands.
Good night, Luke, Bruno. I'm very happy actually to see Bruno. I met him in 2014, and I mean, look at where he is now. I have two questions regarding the application. So I imagine the answer for the first one, but just to clarify, is there any possibility to apply at some year and then to start the program a year later and not to start at the year that you applied? And the second question would be, if after I'm approved to the program, is there any way, independently of the visa, to work while I am doing the program that I've been approved for?
Of course, yeah, thank you, and glad that you and Bruno have such a long relationship to bring you here together. So I'll answer first and add anything you like. So some of the Stanford programs, some of them, will allow you to be admitted and then to delay your enrollment. The MBA program is one that is usually very open to this. But for Knight Hennessy scholars, we do not defer the offers. So there's some strategy, I think, involved if you think that you want to apply and defer. You can apply to the Stanford program and then ask them for a deferral, but you'd want to apply for the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program in that year when you're prepared to enroll. And so that's just a little bit about how the programs will work for the first question. Then for the second question, we expect that you'll be working really hard at Stanford. You know, the rigor of the academic programs is very challenging. And so people sometimes ask, can I work a full-time job while I'm enrolled in graduate school? Probably not. But we do have many of our scholars and students who are engaged with entrepreneurial activities, with research, with projects. The Keystone Projects are often a way that scholars get really involved with doing some sort of professional work outside of the program. So if you have schedule flexibility, as you sometimes do, and depending on the program, then yes, that we want you to be taking advantage of the professional opportunities that may be at Stanford. And sure, some of this will depend on visa status too, about what's available. So Bruno, anything that you would add to this?
That's a perfect answer. I would just add that I was one of the people who actually did that. So I applied first to the MBA and then to Knight Hennessy. But yeah, you cannot defer your Knight Hennessy application, unfortunately.
Okay, let's take a couple more questions before we conclude. Raphael has the difficult task of picking.
Putting in the steps.
Hey, good evening. My name is Tomás. I'm an economics student at University of São Paulo. And my question is, how do you guys at the Knight Hennessy Scholar Program make sure that the scholar is both making the most out of the Knight Hennessy program, but also being able to do all the workload in his academic program, especially thinking in my situation that I consider doing a PhD in economics that can have a pretty heavy workload, especially in the beginning. So, thanks.
Of course, I'll give that to Bruno first. How do you balance the academic program and Knight Hennessy Scholars?
I think the MBA is one of the most demanding programs at Stanford. Believe it or not, it is. Maybe not only academically, but also socially. But the thing is, I know Luke showed you and told you about all the possibilities that Hennessy offers, but truly it is up to you to take advantage of them. So we do have one weekly 1 hour session that is mandatory for everyone in their first year, but everything else is optional. And I'm sure you're going to want to take them. I take them all, so I'm at Denning House about 4 to 5 times a week, and I love them. And I think they do a great job providing you with the opportunities you need and want, while also leaving you the time to work in your program. And I don't know anyone who has struggled with that, but it's really, really optional, and people do it because they get something out of it and because they enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, Bruno said it excellently. I don't have much to add. I will just say, ideologically, we exist to help you succeed in your graduate program rather than to stand in the way of your success. And that is why we don't require much beyond this 1 hour weekly program. Some students will engage very heavily based on when they have a lighter period of their academic studies. When things get heavier, we might not see them as much. Law school is an example. The first year of law school in the US is notoriously difficult. We don't see our first year law students very much at Denning House. We see them a lot more in years 2 and 3, and this is okay. We allow this is acceptable. We want to help you succeed rather than stand in the way of this success. Okay, we'll take maybe 2 or 3 more questions before we conclude the group Q&A.
I wanted to say thank you because this has been already super inspiring from both of you. I can perceive a lot of passion in making a change in the world, so it's really good. And my question is very personal. I'm a mother, so I was wondering, are you inclusive with scholars that are parents already? And how do you balance that with the Knight Hennessy activities, the MBA, or whatever graduation you are doing?
We do have several of our scholars who are bringing children to the campus. We have many more who are bringing partners, some of them husbands and wives who are already married, others of them who are not yet married but maybe soon will be. And so acknowledging that we have this 7-year window after undergraduate, it's not a majority of our scholars that already have children, but we do have some. In fact, we have some scholars that have children while they're scholars, so the number grows by the time that we're finished. We have a group called KIDS, but it's spelled KHIDS, and KH are the Knight Hennessy initials, so we try to be clever. But this is a group for our scholars who have children to be able to connect and bond with each other. And then we have many events that are family friendly. Some of the events that I talked about, including the scholar-driven events, are open to the entire family, and they're just social in nature. And so the kids come and they run around and enjoy the space, and this is something that we welcome. I'll also note that Stanford has housing exclusively dedicated for families and partners. So if you are bringing other people with you to Stanford, there is space where you can live on campus and have that level of support. Finally, Stanford has additional resources, monetary resources. If you have a family for which you need to draw funds to be able to support the cost of living, you can apply from the family fund that Stanford has. So at the graduate school level, there are people, many people who already have partners and some who already have children, and we want to make sure that you feel included and supported. Bruno, any examples to add?
Yeah, I don't know anything about this, honestly. I don't have kids, but I would just add that I love to see the Knight Hennessy kids and babies at our events, and they always come. It's really lovely, but honestly, I don't know much about this topic. It's just very fun to see the babies. Every time someone is born, from our Knight Hennessy community, they post the pictures, and everyone celebrates and sends them stuff, so yeah, it's very nice.
Okay, all right, we'll take a few more. I know we have many hands, so we'll cover what we can.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a question related to the application part, especially what you look for. I'm pretty much interested in doing an MBA, I'm applying, and it seems that a lot of the area that you evaluate sort of overlap, but what will be the difference there? I mean, and especially, are you gonna have also access to the MBA application? So do we have to consider something that complements that? Or also some overlapping is actually welcome because you don't have access to that part? Thank you.
Of course, yeah. The MBA application is probably the application that is most similar to the Knight Hennessy application, so you've ascertained correctly the similarities there, whereas a PhD application is actually quite different, and they're looking for something completely different. But to speak to the question, I do not ever see your Stanford MBA application or any of your Stanford applications, so if the content is duplicative or related, that is okay. Right? You can have the same portions of the essays for the two if they're both answering the prompt. You could have the same recommenders write for you. That's completely fine. So from a tactical standpoint, please know that we're not comparing the applications and saying, are you saying the same things? Are they completely different? Are they the same? So if truly your answers in the MBA application are similar, then you can use those same answers and that will be completely fine. Bruno, any advice since you applied for both programs?
Well, I can only tell you about my own experience, of course. Luke has done both MBA admissions and Knight Hennessy admissions, so he's the best person to tell you about the difference and similarities. But I will tell you that I think my applications were very consistent also because I did think they did see my MBA application. I think that speaks to my ignorance. But I will say that I think Knight Hennessy is looking for the same things that the GSB is looking for, except for more. That's the way I would say it. So the GSB is, of course, looking for academic excellence or excellence in any area, but that's only my impression. I do think that they have less of a bias towards civic mindset than any other program, or than Hennessy. And I think this is a must for Hennessy and just a nice to have or whatever for the GSB. So in my case, the applications were different in the sense that I chose different recommenders because I wanted people to speak to different dimensions of myself. And I wrote, of course, different essays because the prompts were different. And maybe you emphasize a part of your life in one application and another part in the other application. So maybe more professional stuff in the GSB, more personal stuff for the Knight Hennessy. I don't know. This is only, again, only my experience. But I would tell you to take a very good look at what the GSB says they're looking for and what the Knight Hennessy program says they're looking for, and actually spot the differences because I don't think they're completely similar. although they do have similar structures.
Okay, let's take one more question. You've stayed long, and we're keeping you a little long, so we'll take one more.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Luke, so much. Thank you, Bruno. You're an inspiration. I would actually be applying for my PhD, so I do have a question regarding the remaining years. Would the PhD program only cover my tuition, or would it cover the living cost as well?
Oh, this is such an easy question. We'll take one more after this. So, the good news is the PhD also gives you a stipend on top of your tuition. So the stipend is just a little bit less than the Knight Hennessy Scholars, but it's a negligible difference. And so your standard of living should not change much from year 3 with Knight Hennessy to year 4 with the PhD program. And that's a simple, happy one, so we'll do one more.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm not Brazilian, but I work in Sao Paulo at the American School. I'm an educator. And I saw that in your previous applications, you have only 3% of Knight Hennessy Scholars going into education. I was wondering if there's a specific reason for that, or if you're looking to diversify and make it more equitable across all programs and schools. Really looking at the graph you showed before. Thank you.
Of course, yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you for closing us out with the final group question. The reason we only have 3% education is the same reason that we only have 1 Brazilian, because we haven't had more apply. And the percentage of applicants to the education school and from the education field has been about 3%. And I think this is a good question to close on, because it allows me one more time to reinforce the fact that our scholar population is a reflection of who chooses to apply. We, unlike some other scholarship programs, don't have fixed quotas. We don't have forced numbers for this number of countries and this number of disciplines, but we believe that it's our responsibility to take the very best of who chooses to apply. And so if we have many more engineers and many more lawyers who apply, then we're going to have more in the scholar community. So we take the position ideologically that that's just the right way to build our community. But what this allows me to do in my final words on this question is to encourage all of you that you are not capped at the number of Brazilians who can be in the program. We're not capped for the number of degree programs. And so don't feel like that is a barrier. And so for your particular question, it's not that we're holding that number down. I would say to our educators, please come apply. We would love to see that number continue to grow. And to our Brazilians, I want to be standing up here next year and the year after and the year after with many more wonderful scholars next to me and alums. And hopefully it'll be some of you in the room that will be standing here doing this talk with me at some point. And so this is my encouragement to all of you, knowing that there are no caps on discipline, on country, that you are all welcome and you are all eligible, and we want to grow the number of those of you in the room. So with that, I'll just say a few final closing words before we hear the last words from Dr. Pedro. So if you are interested in what you've heard and you want to keep learning more, there are a couple ways to do this. First of all, you can continue to ask questions after this formal session ends. So I saw some hands that we didn't get to, and I'm sorry for that, but in order to accommodate that, I will stay and answer questions for as long as you have them. And I know Bruno can stay for at least a few moments as well. So continue to come up and ask those questions that you may have. If we don't get your questions answered tonight, then you can come to more events. Unfortunately, this will be the last time I'm in Sao Paulo for this year, but we'll have lots of online events. And we'll make sure that you can come and hear from us online. Some of them are specific admission Q&As, where all we talk about is how to apply. So if that's important to you, then you can do that. Some of them are scholar-led Q&As. So there are opportunities for our scholars to share their experience without people like me in the room, and you can have the true, unfiltered discussion about what it's like from the scholar perspective. But stay in touch, keep engaged. It's important that we feel like you have the encouragement and the support that you need. And so my final words before I step down from the stage are thanks. Right? Thanks again to Mackenzie and the incredible generosity of the school and also its leaders for speaking to you all, for showing how important that this event is to the school. Thank you for Education USA for giving us this space and for helping to coordinate. Thank you to Bruno for sharing your perspective and your wisdom with the group. And most importantly, thanks to all of you. You could have been many places tonight in Sao Paulo or somewhere else on this Thursday evening, but instead you're here. thinking about how this fits into your future and taking the opportunity to learn about what we can offer you. And that's meaningful to me, and to Bruno and to all of us at Knight Hennessy. So thank you for that. I certainly hope that when you walk out the doors tonight, you leave this room feeling more inspired about what our program has to offer, more confident about the application process, and most of all, more motivated to take your next steps on your path to impactful leadership. So with that, I will say, not good night, because I think I'll talk with many more of you, but I will say obrigado to all of you for having this time here, and I will step down and invite the closing remarks for this event.
Well, on behalf of Mackenzie Presbyterian University, I would like to thank especially Luke and Bruno for giving us the opportunity to spread the word. We have the same goal here. We have a communion of goals and mindset is to improve and have a civic mindset. So regardless of your background, university background, regardless of your country, we have a common and shared goal to increase the numbers, to have more Brunos, to have more Brazilians, to have a civic mindset that allows us to improve our context and the Brazilian ecosystem in the future. That being said, thank you USP students and different students from all over São Paulo and even from Latin America. What we can say, we will be here for you, for the Mackenzie students specifically. We have Education USA Mackenzie, we have the international office, and we will provide our resources so that we can help to increase the numbers and the figures. Even if you're not a Mackenzie Presbyterian student, we will have our Mackenzie International Student webinars through which Luke, Bruno, and other different scholars can help you have the specific mindset to be successful in this application process. Thank you very much, and once again, have a great night and amazing good luck increasing the numbers.